In the long and winding saga of African liberation, blood has been spilled across generations, across borders, across histories. From the chains of the transatlantic slave trade to the wars of independence and the civil conflicts that followed, the soil of the continent is soaked in the sacrifices of those who believed that freedom must be fought for with fire and steel. Yet as the 21st century unfolds and a new generation rises, 840 million young Africans with the energy of promise and the burden of legacy, another path begins to reveal itself. It is not a path of violence nor of submission, but of consciousness. The mission of this generation is not to shed blood, but to shed illusions. Not to conquer with guns, but with prudence. Not to reclaim through war, but through awakening. This is the foundational vision of PowerAfrika, to be the epicenter of a new African movement where revolution is no longer measured by battlefields, but by minds transformed, narratives reclaimed, and cultures rerouted in truth. This strategic framework and artistic embodiment of PowerAfrika's inaugural impact campaign, The Awakening, a short but powerful visual manifesto designed to ignite the imaginations of African youth and usher in the age of neoliberationism. The New Battlefield, From Conquest to Consciousness. The colonization of Africa did not end with the departure of European flags. It metastasized into minds, into languages, into economics, into algorithms. Africa's children have been programmed to distrust themselves, to mock their heritage, to look outward for validation. Thus, the war we must now fight is not one of territory, but of meaning. The neo-liberator, Africa's new warrior, is a scholar, a storyteller, a coder, a healer. This figure does not carry arms, but carries awareness. They do not raise villages, they rebuild identities. Their battlefield is the digital realm, the classroom, the marketplace, the community gathering. PowerAfrika seeks to give form and voice to this archetype, using the tools of information warfare not to destroy, but to deconstruct lies and reconstruct African pride. The Awakening, we do not shed blood, we shed illusions. The core message of neoliberationism, an awakening, not a war. The narrative arc is poetic and direct. We remember the historical violence, the sound of chains, the imagery of colonial maps and blood-soaked soil. Then comes the pivot, a quiet revelation that our battle has changed. We no longer seek to burn down the master's house, but to leave it entirely, to build something older and greater. They told us freedom comes from war, from blood, from fire. But we are the generation that knows. Freedom comes from awakening, from remembrance, from shedding the illusions they planted in our minds. Through striking visuals, young Africans studying, farming, coding, praying, and dancing, we move toward a crescendo. 840 million African youth. You are not future leaders. You are the present revolution. Rise, not in rage, but in remembrance. Rise, not in violence, but in vision. At PowerAfrika, our message is not war, awakening. Non-violent communication as a revolutionary tool. To awaken a continent without resorting to bloodshed requires more than strategic media. It demands a new language of liberation. Nonviolent communication, NVC, pioneered by Marshall Rosenberg, offers a method through which Africans can rewire how they relate to themselves, to others, and to history. In the context of PowerAfrika, NVC becomes a political instrument. It helps us resolve tribal tensions, not through guilt or silence, but through dialogue rooted in needs, empathy, and shared pain. It teaches African youth to speak truth not to shame, but to awaken. By integrating NVC into PowerAfrika's media content, training modules, and youth circles, we turn the practice of communication into an act of revolution. Digital resistance, reclaiming narrative sovereignty. The same technologies once used to surveil and suppress can now become vessels of liberation. With access to tools like Pictory and other AI-enabled platforms, African youth can produce their own history, their own documentaries, their own memes of power. This is not mere content creation, it is mimetic warfare. PowerAfrika's role is to be the digital forge where this content is shaped. The awakening is only the first of many, an opening salvo in a cultural campaign. It will be followed by a neo-liberationist manifesto, translated into multiple African languages, short reels with iconic lines. Africa is not rising. Africa is remembering. Impact campaigns encouraging youth to share how they are awakening through music, agriculture, tech, healing, or art. With each post, each video, each spoken word, the noise of neo-colonialism is drowned out by the song of self-determination. Mobilizing the 840 million, the call to the neo-liberators, we must now move from message to movement. We do not need to kill to reclaim what is ours. We do not fight with guns. We fight with knowledge. We conquer through consciousness. We reclaim through memory. We are not political parties. We are spiritual and intellectual sanctuaries of self-reclamation. Through digital platforms and on-the-ground partnerships, we become a beacon, broadcasting the message. You do not need permission to awaken. You do not need weapons to resist. You need only to remember who you are. A prophecy in the making. PowerAfrika does not ask youth to follow, it asks them to awaken. This awakening is not soft, not passive. It is fierce, beautiful, and unrelenting. It calls for a generation not to repeat the past, but to transcend it, to wield ancestral wisdom with modern tools, to embrace empathy without erasing rage, to build a future without forgetting the past. The Awakening video marks the beginning of this journey. It is not just a visual message, it is a mirror, a battle cry, and a prayer. For those who are ready, the path is clear. We do not shed blood. We shed illusions. We reclaim Africa, not by force,